I originally played Tryndamere top back in season 10 when I was still a gold player. One day I got off-rolled mid, so I decided, screw it, let's play Tryndamere mid. It went so well, I stuck with it and I never looked back. Tryndamere mid helped me go from gold all the way to Grandmaster, where I'm at now, and he's still my favorite AD champion, is still my second most played to this day. Tryndamere is a fantastic champion to learn mid lane through because he's so simple. Especially if you main him, you can really focus on macro and fundamentals, and you don't have to worry so much about figuring out how your champion works. After you get 10 games in, you'll know how Tryndamere works. His biggest drawback is he's very unique. There's not a lot of champions that play like him, so despite being simple, you can pick him up quick. His skills don't necessarily apply to other mid laners, and there's not a lot of content for Tryndamere mid because it's kind of a niche pick. So today I'm gonna give you guys a quick start Trynd mid guide. So with that all being said, let's go ahead and get started. First, let's talk about runes. Right now, Lethal Tempo is the only viable rune in most cases. There are some niche cases that Tryndamere mains will tell you to take other stuff, but we're talking about the quick start today. Lethal Tempo. This is what I take every game. You can see it's Lethal Tempo. These are the minor runes I take every game. Secondary, I go green. I go Second Wind. I go Unflinching. Unflinching is really good for your ultimate late game, right? That little bit of tenacity can make sure you're not spending your ult just stunned, right? Now, I actually take Legend Bloodline, but you can change this to Legend Tenacity if they have teams with heavy CC. You can also change it to Legend Alacrity if you prefer. That's maybe better. I just really like Bloodline. Now, for the secondary runes, you can swap out the Second Wind for Bone Plating in some matchups. You can swap out the Unflinching for other things, maybe Demolish, maybe Overgrowth, but this is what I'll take. For Summoner spells, always go Flash Ghost. Ghost is the most important cooldown that you'll have on Tryndamere. That's going to decide when you can really team fight well, when you can like split push and run people down really hard in lane. So Ghost is really important. You can get away with Ghost Ignite, maybe even Ghost TP, but definitely take Ghost, usually take Flash as well. For items, the most common build is Kraken Slayer first, into Stride Breaker second, into Hull Breaker third, into situational items. Sometimes you can build Hull Breaker second, maybe if you don't need Stride Breaker, or if you're not team fighting at all and you just want to split push. Or sometimes you can skip Hull Breaker altogether if you're like never by yourself. You're always team fighting. You're never hitting towers. For the situational items, Serelda's Grudge is amazing damage and amazing utility. Phantom Dancer is good damage and it's great for split pushing, right? Because the Phantom Dancer stacks up against the tower. Death's Dance or Maw are good damage mitigation versus heavy AD or AP teams respectively. And Guardian's Angel is really good against very explosive teams, right? Because you might get one shot, but you still can't miss ult if you have Guardian's Angel. So out of all these options, just pick one you like. Pretty much every item has a situation that Tryndamere can build it. Feel free to experiment with your situational items, figure out what works for you. Okay, let's get into the general lane phase plan. Tryndamere has two massive strengths in lane. His all-in potential and his insane sustain. So based on the situation, we'll heavily lean into either our sustain or our all-in potential. So that leaves us with two modes. We have shove and invade, or we have freeze and all-in. So when you're playing Tryndamere mid, it's all about identifying when you want to freeze and threaten to all-in on your opponent, or when you want to kind of shove the wave, sustain and take through the poke, and then leave lane. So let's take an example. Let's say we're playing against a low mobility mage like Victor. If we can create a freeze, he's either going to, we can run him down if he steps up to last hit, right? So he's either going to lose a bunch of minions or we're going to run him down. However, we also want to make sure that we're speeding up the game around him. We want to mess up his enemy jungle. We want to help our team get objectives. Tryndamere is about creating space for your team. So we want to help our team invade. We want to help our team track the enemy jungle. So when our jungle is on a timer, maybe he's finishing his clear, maybe he's ganking bot lane, we're going to shove and we're going to try to mess up the enemy jungle. We're going to try to pull pressure in towards mid lane. In fact, the first time I hit diamond on Tryndamere mid, I was just perma shoving and perma invading the enemy jungle. And it's not a perfect way to play it, but I was pulling so much pressure, pulling so much attention to myself that my team just had a really easy time playing it out. If you can get comfortable freezing when nothing's happening and then threatening to all in the victor, but when your side lanes are fighting or when objectives are up or when you know where the enemy jungle's at, you can shove your wave and leave. That's going to be what Victor's all about. So against champions that like to roam, however, you can't freeze into, right? So let's say you're playing against a Katarina and she will just go bottom. You freeze into the Katarina, she'll just leave. So against Katarina, we'll just lean into our heavy sustain and we'll just shove wave after wave in. We'll shove wave after wave and we'll say, good luck. Good luck roaming, Katarina. If you leave, you're going to lose your entire tower, and you're going to lose like 3-4 minion waves, and I'm still going to go invade your jungle. You usually can't skirmish with Katarina. You don't want to fight her in a big 4v4, but you can deny her so much money she wished she never had left. There are some champions that kind of counter both of our strengths, so we can't sustain through their poke, and we can't run them down. You know, those are champions maybe like Tristana or Auction or Lucian mid when he's viable, or maybe even Zoe sometimes. Against these champions, our goal is to just scale, farm as well as we can, sit under tower, so we can get Kraken, and we can get tier 2 boots, Berserker Grease, and we can run them down. We'll outscale them in the side lane. We will be able to typically outsplit push them unless you die a bunch. So if you're playing against like a Tristana, as long as you're not down like 50 CS and several kills, you should be able to outscale them in the mid game. All right, our general mid game plan. So as soon as we can, we want to get into the side lane. Whenever our bot lane breaks their tower, or if we break our tower, we want to steal bot lane from our ADC. Usually, that's also good for our ADC, because our ADC gets to be mid lane, they get to be closer to the interaction, they get to farm safer under that mid lane tier 1 tower. Now, sometimes, depending on the elo you're in, ADCs don't like to come mid. That's okay. You can just steal bot lane from them. You know, if they're in base, you just go take bot lane, you push it out. ADCs have ADC brain. They're going to go, oh, where can I get farm? The only wave is mid. I'll go mid, I suppose. Our goal in the mid game is to become the richest, most unstoppable raid boss in the game. We do not want a team fight. We're going to split push. We're going to farm. We're going to invade. We're going to steal. We're going to greed. We're like a Viking, okay? We're going to pillage the enemy team. So, oh, our team wants to fight for second dragon. It's only second dragon. We don't care. We're going to get top tower. We're going to get 4 waves, and we're going to steal Krugs. Oh, both teams are messing around trying to play mid lane. Again, we don't care. We're going to soak all the bottom waves, and we're going to open up the map by breaking that bottom tower. Our main priority is getting as rich as we possibly can. One of Tryndamere's biggest mid-game strengths is incredible 1v1 potential. So when you're in the side lane, if somebody comes to answer you, if you know the rest of the team is on the dragon, so, you know, let's take an example. Let's say the team's fighting on dragon, and they send Victor to come match you in the top lane. You can just dive him and take the tower and keep scaling. So the biggest mistake I see with Tryndamere's is they team fight too much in the mid game. Make sure that you get to 3 or 4 items before you mess around with your team too much. Be split pushing. You should be 10 CS per minute on this champion consistently, especially in the mid game. You can push waves, you can proxy waves, you can steal jungle camps. Do everything you can. Tryndamere's other biggest strength in the mid game is how fast he rotates. So let's say our team's fighting dragon and we go top and we pull their Malphite top and we can't dive the Malphite. Well, we can rotate mid and push mid before he's able to get there. So now we're pressuring 2 lanes where Malphite can really only pick to answer 1. So we'll just rotate in between the 2, again, snowballing our farm. We're going to be 10, 12 CS per minute if we can keep that up. For team fighting, Tryndamere can really only dive the backline in team fights. So if you have to team fight, which is kind of a last resort and something we don't want to do in the mid game, we can try it a little bit more in the late game, but you want to have Ghost and you need to have ult. You're going to look for flank angles onto the backline. You're not going to play kind of with your team. You're going to play to jump on their backline. You're going to pop Ghost. You're going to run at their backline. You're going to save ult as long as you can. You'll run them down as far as you can, split them apart as much as you can. And the second your ult is done, you're done. You are not a champion without ult. So you leave if you can, go to a side lane and keep pushing. It's better to farm and push when you don't have ult rather than like sit on the outside of the fight and look at it and be like, I sure wish I could interact, you know. Okay, so for final late game macro ideas, we can't afford to be quite as selfish in the late game, right? 1 pick, 1 death, 1 objective fight could be game ending. So there are 2 different ways you can approach it. You can play away from the team and split push, or you can play near the team and play to rotate with them. So classic split pushing means playing away from the team. With this style, whatever our team wants to fight over, we want the opposite lane. If Baron's coming up, we want to be bot lane. If Dragon Soul's coming up, we want to be top lane. And our goal is to push so hard and so much before the objective that we either pull 2 or 3 people to us, or we end the game. We get something equal value to the objective. So if they're pressuring Baron, we're going to pressure bottom inhib and mid inhib. If they're pressuring Dragon Soul or Dragon Elder, maybe, then we're going to pressure to end the game top lane. Or they send 2, 3, 4 people to us, and our team gets to 4v3 or 4v2 on the objective. So split pushing is ideal if you're super far ahead. This is going to be the way you carry through low elo on this champion, is you're going to get really good at split pushing, pulling people away from your team, and then getting really good at 1v1ing and 1v2ing under high pressure situations in the late game. However, to do this, you have to be super far ahead. You have to be comfortable diving somebody 1v1. You have to be comfortable 1v2ing, right? Make sure that you're super far ahead in the mid game. If you're not, you have to play a little bit more near your team. So this is the second option. It's side laning close to your team and playing for rotations. Here, you can't pressure objectives in your lane. Your goal is to create positional advantages in the team fight by pushing out the lane, having somebody respond to you, and then you flanking onto their backline. This is how you can try to win team fights in much more close games. But remember, this is a last resort. It's only if, there's a game-winning objective up or a game-winning team fight's about to happen, but you can't split push because you're not as far ahead, or maybe they have a malfight you can't get through, or they have teleports to match your split push, something like this. The goal of this kind of side laning, where you're close to your team, is actually to play the team fight with your team, but to create a good angle for yourself while trying to split apart the enemy team. Potentially, after the fight, after you blow ult, after you blow ghost, you can come back to the side lane and keep pushing it out. Okay, so for some final important tips, when you're playing Tryndamere, make sure you're working on your auto attacks. Mid and late game, make sure you are side laning on tempo with your team, right? If you're trying to hit bottom inhib while your team is all in base or dead, that's not split pushing, that's just inting, right? So make sure you're timing your split pushing well. Split pushing is predominantly about timing. After lane phase, make sure you're avoiding mid lane as much as possible. You don't want to linger around mid lane as Tryndamere after lane phase. You can maybe flank into mid lane for a pick, for a fight, but very short and very sharp angles coming from mid lane. You never want to sit in mid lane with your team. Make sure you're sitting in those side lanes, pushing them, pulling them apart. Hey guys, quick announcement. We're actually running a Thanksgiving training camp. This is going to be a league coaching weekend. It's going to be 3 days from November 24th to November 26th. Every day is going to be filled with coaching. Everybody who signs up is going to have their own little spreadsheet where we talk about our current focuses. We write down notes from VOD reviews and other notes from other coaching. So if you're interested in participating in the training camp, you can go sign up for it on my site, jsmethod.gg. The links will be below in the description. I'll see you guys there.